What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Brown's Thoughts here. I've sat on this for a day because I didn't want to do it immediately after Baker Mayfield led I almost said Houston Texans because the Houston Texans are interwoven with the Cleveland Browns. Led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a late come from behind win, 20-19 over, ironically, Nick Chubb and the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, by the way, are 0-2, and they've got problems. But Baker Mayfield leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers down the field late in that game, gets a late touchdown, and Cleveland Browns Twitter was out of their fucking minds. And Cleveland Browns Twitter has been out of their fucking minds again on Tuesday with, the follow-up to what was an incredible comeback by the former Browns quarterback. By the way, the only Browns quarterback in the last 25 years to lead this franchise to a playoff win. So I understand the hysteria of we let that guy get away, and he has now become a franchise quarterback and legitimately one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think we need to revisit something that I did earlier in the year. It might have been when they went to the playoffs. We have got to stop with this revisionist history on Baker Mayfield. Like he wasn't bad at the end with the Cleveland Browns. I miss the guy. I love his moxie. I love the way he carries himself. I love his leadership. I love the dog, no pun intended, that he is. The guy plays with a reckless abandon that is almost admirable. He does not give a flying fuck. And that was Cleveland to a T. What sucked was he was not playing well at the end of 2021. And leading into, the 2022 off season, leading into that season, he was not playing well. He had a shoulder issue that needed to be corrected. He was bad. He was really bad. And it got to a point where this was just an irreparable, there was irreparable damage done to this marriage to the point where he had to go. He had to go. Like he even said he didn't want to be there. And it just did not end well. And, the Browns were in a position where they were going to have to pay him. And they didn't feel that they wanted to pay him. And, whether it was the coach, whether it was the GM, whether it was the owner, something was not right. And the Browns felt like they needed to make a change in quarterback, which is right. So they traded him to Carolina. They traded him. They got Deshaun Watson. Baker had made known that he didn't want to be there. So they literally, this is what happened. Basically, the Browns knew that there were limited quarterback options and they had a roster that was potentially ready to compete. So they desperately, after getting told by Deshaun Watson no, and knowing that Baker Mayfield was not coming back, they went back with a fully guaranteed contract, which we know was a mistake. They traded 3 first-round picks and a bunch of other shit to Houston, and it didn't work out. Baker Mayfield, by the way, got traded to Carolina that summer or that offseason. I actually remember it. I was in New York on vacation, and I found out that Baker Mayfield got traded to Carolina. And, it didn't work out for Baker in Carolina. So much so that he got benched and released and ended up in Los Angeles with the Rams. And the only reason he played is because Matthew Stafford was out for the year. And that incredible drive with no timeouts down the field with Sean McVay against the Raiders. I remember that game. It was one of the more unbelievable, moments. And it was just a quintessential Baker Mayfield moment where he leads them down the field and they wins. And that's what got him the contract and the opportunity to essentially succeed Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. And what has the guy done? The guy has gone there and run with every opportunity that he's had and just been successful, and good for him. He's had good coaching with him too. And it's meshed, and he's had to grow up and mature. And for God's sake, this guy, Colin Cowherd, fucking hated this guy coming out of college. He just won over Colin Cowherd. That's how much this guy has grown since he left Cleveland back in 2022. But can we stop with this revisionist history that it would have been better in Cleveland? It's unfortunate luck. It's Cleveland Browns luck that the guy became a better person and became a better quarterback away from the Browns. But it's not like the Browns screwed this up. It's just bad luck. The Browns screw up a lot of things, but they did not screw this up. Baker was hurt. He was not playing well at the end of that season. So much so that he didn't even play the last game of the season. And the Browns didn't want to pay him. And he wasn't worth paying at that point. So what did he do? He ended up in Carolina. It didn't work. That humbled him even more. And then ultimately, it led him to Los Angeles, where he was reminded of who the hell he was, the two-time walk-on who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy. I think, this is what I think. I think a lot of being the number one pick got to Baker's head. And he needed to be humbled. And sadly, that involved leaving the Cleveland Browns. But any of you morons in the fan base who are acting like that this was some sort of malpractice in letting him go, that wasn't the malpractice. The malpractice was who they picked. And I've said this before, and I will say this until I am blue in the face and I will die on this hill. Two things can be true. The Browns were right to move off of Baker Mayfield, and they picked the wrong horse and stuck their neck out for the wrong guy in Deshaun Watson, who they are still paying dearly for the mistake that they made 3 years ago. So take that with what you will, but I am getting sick and tired of this revisionist history nonsense that somehow this was going to work with Baker Mayfield. It was over. The thing was done. Whether it was a Kevin Stefanski thing, whether it was an Andrew Berry thing, whether it was an ownership thing, Baker Mayfield and the Browns were not working. They had that incredible year in 2020, but the 2021 season was, whether it was injury or whatnot, it was doomed to fail. But let's not act like he just went to Tampa Bay and automatically was good. He had to go through shit to get to where he is. And that's why I love Baker. I will root for this guy until he is out of the league, because that guy just is hard to not root for. He is all sorts of fun. Like I said, he competes with this reckless abandon and the leadership. It's easy to see why the Browns drafted him. But sadly, that needed to be reined in because he got so out of control, and the Browns just really do not know how to manage success, frankly. And, it got out of control. It was an unsustainable partnership, and he had to go. But again, like I said, Carolina did not go well. And he was lucky to get the opportunity that he did in Los Angeles. And that's what gave him the opportunity to compete and ultimately win that job in Tampa. Let's not forget, that wasn't a sure thing when he went to Tampa. It was a prove-it deal. And he had to beat out Kyle Trask, who seemingly, and I don't even know what the fuck Kyle Trask is doing anymore. But Baker is so damn good, and they've surrounded him with pieces, and he has been a leader for that franchise. And, he's gotten pretty good coaching. Say what you will about Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles has won games in the NFL. He's gotten great offensive coaching. Hell, Dave Canales is now a head coach in the league. Liam Cohen is now a head coach in the NFL. He's got two coaches who have coached him are now head coaches in the NFL. So, yeah, it's a perfect storm, and it works against the Cleveland Browns. This happens all the time. But again, I feel like this is like the second video that I've done this year where I've had to just talk people down the ledge of acting like, hey, the Browns screwed up the Baker Mayfield piece of this. They screwed up the Deshaun Watson piece of this. That's a completely separate issue. Like, they were right to move off of this guy because it was not going to work. I don't care what you say, it was not going to work. The current Baker Mayfield that we have was not going to exist in Cleveland, Ohio. He had to leave. And good for him. And I'm proud of him. And I'm very happy for him. And you know what? If he wins a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, I know some Bucs fans. I will be thrilled for Baker Mayfield. I'm almost to the point where maybe I'd want to buy a number 6 jersey because I love that guy for what he did for our franchise. So let's just be thankful for that. And yes, the piece that he's not there, be mad at management for picking Deshaun Watson, who was really the antithesis of what Baker Mayfield is. That guy got paid a ton of money, didn't want to work. He's been an asshole, and he's gotten himself into a bunch of trouble, and he doesn't seem to give a shit. Baker Mayfield, when he is motivated, that guy is a dog, and you've seen it in Tampa Bay. So I can root for him, but the Browns piece of this and them screwing it up is a completely separate issue. So anyway, thanks for listening here on this edition of Browns Thoughts. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.